2 months ago, and I didn't save it properly, so we didn't have that one retained and whatnot. But so Bob Ewell and Mike Salter calling in from Canada.
Greetings.
And Ted Cry is getting important calls. How are you, Bob?
Oh, yeah, me, I'm good. Thank you. And you?
Doing very well. Look forward to seeing you in the Poconos.
Well, we can hardly wait to get somewhere. We haven't been anywhere for so long.
So that yellow, was it a BT7 that Tom posted? Is that Tom's car or your car? Or?
Oh, it's Tom. It's a BN6.
Oh, it's a BN. Oh, nice.
I'm sorry, it's a BN7. What am I saying?
Okay,
BN7.
nice. Yeah,
No, it's
pretty car with the hardtop.
It's a two-seater tri-cab with the hardtop.
Okay, you got all the goodies there.
Most of them, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
It had no overdrive when we got it, so we swapped out the transmission for one with overdrive.
Okay. So does that have a 3.5 diff with it then, Bob?
Yeah, it did.
Get the best of both worlds that way, don't you?
Oh yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and we put in a 28% overdrive as well, so
Okay.
it just ticks over at 60 miles an hour.
I can imagine. That's great. Well, we do have an overdrive question tonight, so that'll be appropriate. Is that still on? I'm going to put. I muted Ted, so we don't hear his background noise. So, hi Rob, good to see you. Rob, are you in Vermont or are you in Needham?
Hey Pete, yeah, I'm still in Vermont. How are you?
Okay. How's the fly fishing?
It's pretty good, actually. Water's kind of low though. Are you a fly fisherman?
No, you said you've been up there fishing in your email,
Yeah.
so no, I'm not.
Yeah. How was the family vacation?
It was great. Yeah, we were out in Maui, and so out for our granddaughter's 8th birthday, and so thoroughly enjoyed that. And the temperature there was about the same temperature we have here, but it was a lot of big waves. There was a storm out in the Pacific, so they had stormcraft warnings with red flags on the beaches, and the surfers were in the water, but they were recommending for normal swimmers to avoid going in the water.
Huh.
So,
Now, weren't you going to take the caravan of Healey's on a trip too with the family, or?
well, we did that. That was just a local. We did that. We went to a go-karting track that's about 10 miles away. So we did a little family tour with that with the 3 sprites. And so my grandson Lucas, who's the middle grandson, he beat his older cousin and me in every race. And the last race, he beat 12 other drivers. So he was at 17. He was pretty excited about that.
I bet he was. Yeah, that's great.
So, and I get to ride. And he's got a Miata in Maui that he's putting a turbo in it. He's got it all built up and whatnot. So it's lowered the suspension and putting a computer in it and stuff. So, but yeah, so he's a real car guy. So I tell his parents I apologize because I guess I've rubbed off on him.
I think it did. Yeah.
So good. Well, let's get started. I think it's just after 7. So again, thank you guys all for joining. Look forward to that. So I saw Steve. I saw you're on, right, Steve Everett? Thank you very much. Great.
I am on.
So please go ahead, Steve. Oh,
excuse.
Yes. Okay. So Steve, we were talking earlier before you joined that you had a question regarding overdrive. So Bob Ewell was talking about his son's car. He's got overdrive with his, and I know there've been discussions in the past regarding what's the best way to use overdrives in terms of putting the clutch in and out of that. So what specifically questions can we help with that, Steve?
Well, Michael Salter brought me up to speed a couple of months ago, and he said what he does, I think I have this right, is he clicks off, this is going out of overdrive, clicks off the overdrive, pushes in the clutch, and gives the gas a little bump. And I've read in AH Experience a number of people saying the same thing, that of course, that takes the pressure off the transmission and all
Solenoid.
by putting in the clutch. And yet there were others who said, well, you know, it's not really necessary. So I just wanted to get a thought from those who know and know more than I do, what tends to be the general feeling, clutch or no clutch.
Well, Mike, we quoted you already, so do you want to get the first crack at him?
Yeah, sure. As you said, I always engage and disengage the overdrive with the clutch in. My reasoning for it is that I've taken a lot of overdrives apart, which have had broken thrust washers in them. The little bronze rings that take the thrust of the planet gear. And I think that they break as a consequence of the jerk, the impact of a change in and out of overdrive. And you got to take the whole box apart to change that thrust washer. So I'd much rather just put the clutch in than do that.
Okay.
And I started that about 5 years ago, Steve. I do the same thing. And I think it was discussed here in this forum, and I started doing that, and it seemed worked fine for me. So I did 2 months ago when we were talking, I did bring up that I was having an issue with the overdrive on my BJ8, and I was saying how when you flip it into overdrive, it would go out of overdrive, and then you put it into overdrive, it would come out. It was reversed.
Oh.
And what it turned out to be was the switch. The switch was bad, and so I ended up. I didn't have a spare overdrive switch, but I had one of the other spare toggle switches. So I tried that, and it was able to work fine. So then I went and ordered a new switch, and that solved my problem. So I'm going in and out of overdrive. My BJ8 fine now. So I'm a happy camper again.
Good. I think
Any
we
other
have that.
thoughts regarding overdrives and going in and out and engaging or not?
I have a quick question. So you're saying engage the clutch going into overdrive and out of overdrive?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I suggest.
Yeah, that's okay.
So curious, are there others on the call that have done that or never done that or have tried it or have any feelings in that regard? I guess those of us with sprites don't really qualify for this question.
Question
on that. I have a question.
Go ahead, Jack.
When you depress the clutch and then you throw your overdrive switch either in or out, you rev the engine a little bit before you let the clutch back out?
Yes.
I do. I blip the throttle.
Essentially, it's just like doing a gear,
Like doing a what?
like a regular gear change.
Okay. Okay.
To be, I guess just one point on this, I guess is when I found out that there was a secondary switch that you had to blip the throttle to really turn it off, because some people were telling me, oh, all you do is flip the switch off. But then when you do and you give it any gas, it really jerk. And I had an MGB with overdrive, and I used to always use the clutch, to turn it on and, turn it off and on. And I got to say now, to take it easy on the overdrive, I always put the clutch in and I'll just flip the throttle when I'm turning it off and, go from there.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, thanks for the question, Steve. Any other questions from your perspective, Steve Hibbard?
Yes, yeah, and this got a lot of response from AHCNE, and that was the dieseling that I was getting. And thanks to Bob, who's made some adjustments, and the fact that I'm now using the high octane gas, and I, from time to time, not every time, but I put a little sea foam in. Maybe someone has a better idea, but it's getting much better. But I heard all sorts of things. One thing I was not comfortable doing is when it was really doing some fair amount of dieseling, was leaving it in gear and turning off the ignition, because that really jolts the situation. So one person suggested that what I do is put it in neutral and rev the gas a little bit and then turn it off. And that seemed to work some, but it's getting better as I think I'm cleaning. They
Again, if
They
you're not
said-
speaking, put your phone on mute, please, your computer. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
So one thing that someone said was when they talked everything from that to going as far as I think as they call it decarbonizing in the engine was that this guy suggested you could take the timing and take the rotor and just turn it about 1/8 of an inch counterclockwise. So, there's all sorts of different ideas of what works and what doesn't. So I wanted to get the thoughts from the members who know, who have probably run into this problem before.
So Steve, did you see the biggest improvement with the adjustments that Bob Abbott did to your car? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think using the higher octane gas,
Okay.
I think, and maybe using the seafoam, which is having said, but now I get virtually none. And I wouldn't get it if I went a couple of miles, but it was only after things sort of heated up that you would get the after running of the engine, the diesel.
Did Bob's adjustment, was that on timing or carburation?
I'll let him speak to that.
Okay. Bob, are you still
A little
on?
bit of both, actually.
Okay. A little bit of both? Yeah.
And
A little bit
it's,
rich, plugs were a little black, so we leaned it down some and then backed off the timing just a skosh, just a few degrees. I don't think we lost anything on the acceleration or any power out of the engine, but seemed to have helped.
and I checked all the spark plugs and they were, a little dirty, but it wasn't getting any of the white that you'd get if you were running really hot. So cleaned them up and put them back in, and that seems to be fine.
So were you using originally 87 octane fuel, Steve?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you that my 100 runs on really badly. Whatever you call it, pre-ignition. And I've done most of the things you would normally do to stop it, and it still does it. But I don't run on. I run on 87. I think you've misunderstood what people were talking about letting the clutch out. The way I avoid having problems is I put the car into top gear, let the clutch out at idle, let the clutch out until you hear the engine start to labor very slightly. It's starting to load up, then turn off the ignition. And that extra load on the engine will stop the dieseling. And you can actually let the clutch out as the ignition is off. You can let the clutch right out, and it won't do it. Just needs a little more friction.
Okay. Thank you.
As long as we're talking gasolines, if you have a Shell station near you, their 93 octane is a nitrogen enriched. And I've had wonderful luck with that. That's all I run in my 104, which is a good 10-to-1 compression. But I could go into a long story about using that on other cars, but it has some characteristic of clearing out the cylinders from what I can tell. And a cousin of mine worked in the laboratories, and he said that that Texaco Shell gas, it did things they never expected it would do. And that one thing was to help the car get cleaned out and running well. So if you have a station around,
Yeah.
Is that all Shell
Try
stations?
that one.
Is that all Shell stations, Ted, or just those in New York?
Not well. I haven't been outside of New York, so I don't know. So all of them around here have I think it's their only high test, really.
So you look, does it say nitrogen on the pump?
Yeah.
I'd never heard that.
Yeah. Well, I used to commute about an hour and 15 minutes to New Jersey and back, and I started using Texaco System 3 years ago, which became the Shell later on. And the car just started to run phenomenally better and better gas mileage. And when I talked to my cousin, he said, yeah, it's just a wonderful gas that they had this nitrogen thing into it. So now I use the shell, and that's all I run in the 104 because it's very prone to running on because of the high compression it runs. And that helps to take care of it. So,
Wow. I'd never, because I tried to look for Sunoco and use their highest octane, but I'll look for the shell. I wasn't aware of that.
yeah, give it a try. Yeah, it's
Peter,
Okay.
can you hear?
I can, go ahead.
I don't know, I know it's available in New York, but I've got 5 old cars on the road and I use strictly non-ethanol gas, which is actually fairly easy to find in the upstate and Vermont area. And that makes a big difference in all of my cars.
I don't think it's as prevalent in other states as maybe what you get in upstate New York.
You can get it in Connecticut, but it's 100 octane race gas. And I use it
Okay.
in both my cars and it's like $10 a gallon though, but it really works well. Race car
here
has
in-
to have it. And I put it in my Model A too, believe it or not.
Here in the Albany, Bennington, Vermont area, it's running about $5.10 a gallon right now.
Well, that's come down obviously, so that's good.
Yeah.
So I have a comment. I just went today and bought fuel. I'm in Falmouth on the Cape, and we have a Falmouth Air Park. And so I can get aviation fuel right out of the pump. And it was close to $10 a gallon. But it is available in both leaded and unleaded, I might say.
Wow.
Yeah, and I can buy it right out of the pump. So I use it in motorcycles and pretty much every winterization of any snow blowers or pressure washers or any of that equipment. And
Using that instead of Stay-Bill?
Yes. And it makes a huge difference. I mean, it stays not only months, but for years,
It never goes bad.
It's very stable.
You can get it at some Sunoco stations down in Connecticut. The 110 octane stuff.
Yeah.
Hey,
They actually have a
Peter.
pump for it.
Yeah, hi, Bob.
Yeah, how you doing? Hey, there's an app you can get that it's called Pure Gas, P-U-R-E, gas. You
Yeah,
can download it and it'll tell you where any of the non-ethanol gas is located in your area. Just download it and put it on your phone,
yeah.
and you just hit on it and it'll go from your closest to the furthest away station that sells the non-ethanol gas. But I've
Right.
always found that the non-ethanol gas is, it's definitely below 93 octane, more like 87 or 89, but I don't know if that matters.
Well, the aviation fuel is very high octane.
Well,
It's very high octane. I think it's over 95, I think.
I'm sure it is. And, and one of the apps here, it says I can buy it at the Keene, New Hampshire airport, but I don't
Okay.
think I want to be paying $10 a gallon for it.
I know, it's gonna be over $100 to fill up your tank in a Healey.
I guess, one of the things I used to always say is the KISS principle, keep it simple. And to be perfectly honest, I just assumed with the Healey, now my motor has been rebuilt. I just assumed you had to use high test. I go to Cumberland Farms, fill up a high test. I don't have any afterburn, no problems whatsoever. And in the winter, I put, Statron in it for the winter, but not normally. And to tell you the truth, these are interesting to hear, people having these types of issues, because I guess I should bless myself, thank myself that I don't have it, but it runs great on just high test, regular high test, 10% ethanol.
Yeah, that's what I do too, Norm. I run high test in all the Healeys.
Yeah.
Peter, I
generally
have
don't have
one more-
problems.
I
Go
have
ahead, Ken.
another comment about stable. I think I've brought this up before. There's a product out there called K100, and they make it for regular gasoline and diesel. It is much, much better in stabilizing fuel than stable. It actually changes the ionization of the water, and it will literally burn water. It's called K100.
Great.
Where
And
where
can you
is
buy
that
that in
available?
automotive stores, Ken?
Yes, any automotive store should have it.
Okay, well,
Hey,
good.
Peter,
Please.
Peter,
Hi, Nick.
it's Nick. This K100, if you read the material safety data sheet, it has ethanol in it.
Okay.
K100. Yep. We were using it in the business and we quit for that reason.
Really?
Yep.
Well, all I can tell you is at the store that I use, the salesman came in and showed us some demonstrations, and
Yeah.
Yep. I've been using
Yep.
it for the last 5 years in my cars, and boy, it's worked great for me.
Oh, there's a lot of it sold, don't get me wrong. And I know the demonstration you're talking about because they did the same thing for us. And then as time went on, we had some questions about it from some customers. And one of the guys got the MSDS sheet and found that it did contain ethanol. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying that we're trying to get rid of ethanol so it doesn't suck up moisture. And there is ethanol in that. So just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Nick. And thanks, Ken, for bringing that up.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Steve, anything else?
I have one just quick question, and then I'll
Please.
let others. And that is, could someone give me an idea, if they have it, of where I could get one of these small bottles of paint that you can get, where if you need to do a little sort of touch-up paint? There's supposedly a place that you can go to which has got practically every different paint based on cars, the different types of cars, and they'll mix it for you, but it'll just be in a small bottle, so you can do a little, much as you hope you don't ever get the little bumps and dings and whatnot, you do. And it just, to me, would be nice to have a little bottle where you could do a little touch up if that was possible. So does
But
anyone
you're right. So the paint shops are, they can do a great job now with analyzing your paint. So like, do you have Allied Automotive in your area, Steve?
I'd have to look. I'm not sure.
Because I've gotten touch-up paint for Allied Auto, because again, your car's been repainted. It's not the original color it's not the original paint on your car, right, Steve?
Correct.
Yeah. So if you just say, let's say the car is Healey blue, you go to a car show and you see many, many different shades of Healey blue.
Right.
So I would have your paint on your car analyzed at a place like Allied Auto, and then they can mix up and create a touch-up bottle or pint for you.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, great.
Do you have any panels on your car that you could take off, or?
Yeah, well, I guess I could, although it's probably one that has been pretty well sheltered from the sun.
Okay.
Do you call it the plinth plate there below the grill, between the cowl and the bumper?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, that's something that could be easily removable.
Well, again, if you go Allied Automotive, they mix paint.
Okay.
I know a lot of, paint shops, that's what they utilize as a supplier. And you can have your paint, they can come back and give you an estimate on that. So anyone else have any thoughts as it relates to analyzing paint colors?
Yeah, I got some done for my truck.
Yeah.
And it was funny, it was a non-Ford color on my truck. I don't know how it got there, just like a bottom stripe. And I went to a place down in Connecticut called Levine's, and they actually analyzed it on the truck. They just brought the machine out and analyzed it.
Okay.
And, so those things, they're fine.
And the touch-up paint they got, did it match well?
Yeah, it was just a touch-up bottle, but it matches fine.
Right.
The only
Yeah.
thing that I was always told when I did the Healey, the guy who painted it told me, order an extra gallon of paint, just in case, so we did
Yeah.
that. In fact, I had to repaint that nose, and unfortunately I had the paint. Because even touching up is one thing, painting a whole panel, you know, you have to be a little bit leery, even if they match it with a machine.
Right.
Another
Yep.
thing, a lot of these auto body companies that supply the body shops, they can actually put the stuff in a rattle can too and have it perfectly matched.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Ken.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so I see Rob Moore's on. So we've been talking with Rob for the past 6 months or so about, he's got a Healey he's trying to bring out of hibernation. It's up in Vermont at the moment, and he's been stored for what, 25 plus years, I believe, Rob?
Yeah, just about, yes.
Okay. Well, why don't you just give us a brief where you are in the process right now? And you've got 4 different questions that you've asked of us in advance, so maybe we can address those. Let's just bring everyone on so we're all on the same page, so to speak.
So, yeah, so just an update from the last time we were on. I did end up ordering a new tank, a new fuel tank, because of all the rust and sediment that was in my old steel tank. I had some issues with the tank that I got, but ultimately got those squared away, finally got the tank in, got a facet cube pump, put that in. So now I've got gas pushing towards the engine, and I then previously I had been able to turn the car over by hand. And so I was trying to see if I could fire it up, and wasn't getting any spark. So since I was doing it by myself, I pulled one of the plug wires to hold it against the block, and I was trying to reach that solenoid button to crank it over by myself. For some reason, I could not get my finger around the back of that to get to the solenoid button, which I don't remember that being a problem before. I mean, you're supposed to be able to access that from the engine bay, correct?
I have, yep. I did that on my BN6, on my BN4.
Okay, so anyways, since I couldn't get at it, I took it, I loosened it up, pulled it forward, and it spun the engine, you know, a couple times, and then it just stopped. So my guess is that my 25-year hibernation is catching up with that starter solenoid. So my question is, I did pull it out and I hitched it up, and it does, I do get a buzzing noise, but I don't get any click sound of the magnet actually moving inside. So I guess I'm just trying to confirm, is it basically junk? Can those be rebuilt? I haven't seen anything that says they can be rebuilt.
Anyone have any thoughts on that?
My experience, starter solenoids are very reliable. And to check if you've got a problem, best thing to do is get a heavy blade screwdriver and just jam it between the 2 big terminals and see if the engine cranks doing that. And that'll tell you if the solenoid is at fault.
Yeah, I should have done that first, Mike, but unfortunately, since I had loosened it up to get my fingers around it, I ended up pulling it out, but I did hitch it up to a battery pack, you know, put the positive terminal to the body of the thing, and then touch the negative to the post that would have come from the starter switch. And all I get was a buzzing noise.
That would be unusual, but it's a possibility. Yeah.
Is that coming from the solenoid? You're getting the buzzing noise, Rob?
Yes.
Okay.
And it could be maybe the battery pack's just not kicking enough juice to move the magnet. I don't know, so there is no rebuild on those. I could try. I'm sorry.
I would check to make sure you have enough current there from your battery pack before you replace it.
Okay.
So how strong's your battery, Rob? Did you replace the battery?
I did replace the battery, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
the
know that's
battery,
gonna,
the battery
Go
was spinning the motor over, and I'd had problems in the past where you'd press the starter button and sometimes it would engage and other times it wouldn't, and I always assumed that was just the starter motor. But I'll give it another whirl. I was just more, I I didn't see any way to take it apart to access the guts of it.
No, you can't, in my experience, you can't take them apart. Did you, I don't know if you heard my question, is it a cast body or a pressed steel body, the solenoid?
It looks like it's cast.
Yeah, and
Right,
what year's the car?
61.
Yeah, probably was. They're getting pretty rare, so try to hang on to it.
Are they? Okay.
And are the reproduction ones, are they coming out of China or they're
Well,
better than that?
they're made of pressed steel. They look quite different.
Oh,
Yeah, this looks like almost like an aluminum alloy.
Yeah, that's a zinc die cast. Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
original. You'll probably find a date on it if you looked.
Yeah. Okay, so then a while
so
back.
Rob, can I just add one more point to that? So one of the things that Bob Abney taught me many years ago is if you go to a local auto parts store, you can get a lead that you hook onto the spark plug wire and onto the spark plug itself. And when you turn it over, it shows you if you're getting any spark. So quite often you say, "Oh, I'll just hold it away from the top of the terminal." But with that device, you can see it very clearly. So I leave that in my spare bag all the time, and I've used it multiple times. It tells you if you've got a spark or not.
Okay, no, that's I had heard of that, but I don't have one. So yeah, that's another thing to try, especially when you're doing it by
yourself too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but any auto parts store, they're like $10 or something like that. But it's well worth it.
Okay,
And
thanks.
Your ground wire from the block to the frame can be very problematic too. I've had that happen to me.
From the
You've got
motor?
you've got a ground wire from your engine block to the frame somewhere, I'm pretty sure, and it may be from the transmission housing. But I've had some of them be corroded or whatever and given me fits, and I just take them off and clean them or replace them. So that's another part of the circuit there.
Well, that's a good point, because I'm pretty sure that is missing on my car.
Okay.
No ground wire?
I'm pretty sure there is not. Where does it typically mount into?
Probably look in your Moss catalog and it'll show you, if you're to buy a new one, it'll show you roughly where it's supposed to be.
Goes between the bell housing and the right frame rail, about right where the bell housing is.
Okay.
There's a captured threaded bolt in there in that frame rail. And then as Mike points out, and so that is the ground wire.
Yeah.
So Michael, go ahead.
I take it off and clean it. I mean, it's only two bolts on the ends, and then you've covered that base. So it can be problematic for you.
Now, Rob, you said you've been storing this in a dry garage or basement, right?
Yes.
Okay. And is the car up on jack stands now, or?
I had it on jack stands when I was messing with the gas tank and stuff, but it's back down now. But
well,
yeah,
it'd be easier to get to the ground wire up on jack stands than trying to crawl on it. Mike's smiling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not there, because in the parts that I had ordered 20 years ago, that box that I found, it looks like there's a cable that's about 10 inches long. That's a braided silver looking cable.
That's
probably it.
Yep, that's it.
I didn't realize that would tie in.
Yep, and that's good advice for any older car.
Yeah.
So will they run without? Obviously, it will run without that ground wire or not?
It did.
Your starter won't turn over as well. You know, it's just a good idea.
Yeah, I thought it was required, but you're saying it's not, Ken?
Well, sometimes the engine will be grounded to the frame through, different types of body mounts. Even though there's rubber, you still got a bolt going through from metal to metal. But that ground strap makes a world of difference in the old, especially if you have a 6-volt automobile.
Yeah, makes sense.
Also, should mention that the battery master switch has another ground strap on it, which is just as important. and you have to check that it's in good condition.
I did check that and it seemed to be in good condition, but I did notice the cable from the battery to the solenoid has, you know, areas on the covering that are worn through. Would that possibly also contribute to?
No,
Sure.
it won't, but it may cause a small fire.
Oh, is that all, Mike? I mean, that's good. That should be fine. Because I don't have a ground either, so.
Real good idea to make sure that that's well wrapped.
So was that in your part supply, a new battery lead from the battery up into the starter solenoid?
No, that's on my list to order, so that's why I'm trying to get a complete list of stuff I think I might need in the future, which sort of brings me to my next question, which was on one of the earlier calls, there was some discussion about a long neck original thermostat and how that helps with overheating problems. I've looked at the vendors and I've not been able to find one. Does anybody have any insight as to whether?
Pretty sure David Knock is the only guy that has those. I'm pretty sure he is.
And are they is it worth switching over to it?
Not in my experience, but I'm sure others will have opinions.
I know Judd Perkins he's got a 65 BJ8. He swears by it, but.
Okay. All right.
But I think you're absolutely, I know David Knock does. Bob Buell, is that anything that you sell, those long necks?
We did at one time, but they were expensive and we weren't that thrilled with them. We couldn't really see any advantage to them. So we don't keep them anymore.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's good insight.
So it's probably not worth, stopping anything else you got going on with trying to get the car going.
Right.
Rob.
So on a related note, I am figuring that once I fire it up, I'm going to need a new water pump. Does anybody have any experience or concerns about the quality of the vendor products that are out there as far as the UK pumps versus Moss or water pumps?
I sell kits and you can rebuild your own pump.
Oh, you can?
Not that difficult.
Okay.
So what is it, a bearing and things like that, Mike?
Pair of bearings, the special seal, gasket. That's about it, really. Yeah, but it's easy done, and it's a good rebuild. And we use alternator bearings in them now, so they're fully sealed bearings. They last a lot longer. And
I'm sorry, who did you say sells that, Mike?
Me.
Oh, you. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all
just
right.
send me an email or something. Yeah.
Okay, great. Brake lines. I was shocked to see that AH Spares and Ahead for Healey sells copper brake lines. I didn't think those were legal in the United States. Am I mistaken?
They're not copper. They are not copper.
They're a combination copper and nickel.
A nickel alloy copper. But they're nothing like plumbing copper.
Okay, because it seemed like they had the conifer brake lines, but then they also had something that just said copper. But
I'm not aware of that.
But anyways, it sounds like you guys are confirming my memory that it's not a good idea to just use copper for brake lines, but the conifer stuff works. That's the copper nickel, I presume.
Yeah, we use it. We use it a lot.
Do you have the equipment to do the flaring?
I have some flaring equipment, but it's kind of the hobbyist version of stuff.
With a bit of practice, you can buy the brake line at any auto parts store and zinc coated steel and make your own. It's not that hard.
Oh, okay. So just, what are they, like 3/8 or?
It's 3/16 steel
3/16?
tubing.
Okay.
Steel brake line.
And do you have a bender, a tube bender as well, Rob?
I do. It's a crappy one, but I do have a
Yep.
tube bender.
Yeah, it's obviously not something you use every day, so yeah.
No, the toughest part I had was actually doing the flarings. I never seem to get the flarings so that they will seal well.
Well,
That's pretty important.
It is kind of important.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, kind of important on the brakes, but I'm gonna have a fire anyway, so. it'll be easy to fix it.
Well,
That'll
if you
keep the
use
fire going though.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely. The brake fluid.
Yes, it will.
If you use the copper nickel, you really don't even need a tubing bender if you're just careful with it. That's how nice it is to work with.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So 2 other quick questions, Peter, if I still have time.
Please.
When I put the tank in, and I put the new foam seal underneath the fuel tank. And then I went to install the straps over the top of the fuel tank that bolt through the floor. And they won't go, my old ones with the old tank would go through the floor, and these ones will not go through the floor. And I suspect it's because of the thickness of the cushion, the seal. Anybody know any tricks for getting those tightened down? I mean, I'm assuming eventually that seal will compress.
Need to get a very large person to sit on the tank.
Are you making a comment about my stomach, Mike?
Nothing wrong. I can't see it actually.
Yeah, so how far out is it when you try to get that strap over and the bolt that goes through the back of the trunk there? How far are you out?
The threads just barely meet the floor.
Okay.
I mean, it could be that the floor is off because I handmade that floor, 30 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So it could be off, but the old straps would go through there. I mean, the only thing I've been able to come up with is getting some like barrel bolts or something or sex bolts, whatever they call them, to actually go in there and take that threaded bolt. But I didn't know if other folks had experience.
So
with
have
that.
you measured the straps and the bolts of the new one compared to the old one?
Yes. Yep. They're
Are they
exactly
shorter?
No, they're exactly the same, other than my old ones, the little padding, the little cardboard like padding was gone, but that's only a 16th or 18th of an inch maybe.
And the straps fit around the tank okay? The tank is not thicker than the old tank?
Well,
You said the old straps fit, right?
the old
The old straps fit?
Oh, that's a good point. I did not try to bolt in the old straps. I just measured them up against the new ones. Well, that's what I guess I just assumed that the tank is 5 inches high. I don't still have my old tank, so I can't measure it. So I don't know if they are exactly the same height, but I guess I just assumed it was that cushion, because that cushion's got to be 3/8 to 1/2 inch thick when it's not compressed.
So Rob, I just recently put a fuel tank in a BN4, and the guy I do a little work for, he ordered the foam from one of the suppliers, and what we found out, it was way too thick to get the straps down. So we went out and just got thinner foam and put in there to get the bolts through. But it is pretty, I'll tell you, it was a lot thicker than what was taken out of it.
Yeah.
And maybe that you're right, it needs years of compression. But you can probably just get some good close cell foam from a hardware store that's thinner and put it around the opening.
Well, that's a good point, because that's exactly what I think I'm running into. I got the foam from a vendor, and it is a lot thicker than what I pulled out of there.
Absolutely. I mean, I had the same problem.
Okay, well, that's
Go,
good to
hey,
know.
hey, Mark, this won't fit. So, yeah.
Okay,
But Bob, did you have a fire too?
What's that?
Did you have a fire as well?
No, I don't know. I don't.
he's grounded. He's well grounded.
I don't have a nasty boy.
I did. I had a fire.
Uh-oh. You don't want those.
So the last question I had, Pete, is I've been looking for some close-up photographs of the area around the throttle return spring and throttle return spring bracket and the choke, because it appears that mine may be missing that, and I'm having a hard time visualizing it. I've looked at like the parts catalogs and the manuals and some of the pictures that were on the web, but I didn't know if anybody had a reference point where they've seen some close-up pictures of how that stuff gets tied in.
And this is a BT7, right, Rob?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can take a picture of mine, Rob, if you want. If I get your email, I can try to send it to you.
Oh, that'd
Yeah,
be
I
great.
can hook you guys up because Rich only lives in Medfield, Rob.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. I
Yeah.
think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, Pete, if you can hook us up,
Yeah,
I'll be
I'll
happy
do
to
that. Yeah, it's kind of like the dating game. I hook people up.
There you go.
That's all I had. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the help.
Yeah.
So are you cautiously optimistic you may get the thing fired in the next 30 days?
I am. I think if I hadn't run into this solenoid issue and had been able to sort out this, if I was getting spark, I think she'll fire up.
Yep. Great. Okay. Good. Well, thank you for all those questions. Let's see. Paul, are you on the line? Paul, you had a question regarding the balancing of your carbs on a HS6 carbs, right?
Yep, that's right, Peter. I'm here. Thank you. So BJ7 63, the dual carbs SU HS6, and so that carburetor has a little float bowl that's bolted on to the dash pot in the jet, and started leaking fuel out of the rear of the float bowls, which I assumed was, and it turned out to be, the little O-ring in the hose that connects the float bowl to the jet. So, from Moss, got the new hose, put it on, roughly rebalanced the carbs and started the car up, ran okay. And then when the next Saturday came, I took the opportunity to just get out the workshop manual and fully rebalance the carbs. And it was weird because when I, went through that procedure, when I sort of zeroed out the throttle screws on both of the carbs and then turned them back in, 1.5 screws to get them up to the right idle, the front carb was running much hotter, meaning, the hiss was much higher. I actually have one of those little, barometric pressure things, whatever they are, with the bubble in the chamber. And the front carb, at exactly 1.5 turns on both carbs, was running a lot higher than the rear carb. So I'm wondering, number one, does anybody have any ideas about, if I replaced the one hose and the new hose was the right hose from Moss, but it's not exactly the same as the old hose was, could that have an impact on the two carbs? And secondly, just forgetting that, even if that's not the problem, where do you guys go next if, the front carb is hissing a lot more than the rear carb at the same, throttle screw level? Where do you go next?
And how's the drivability of the car, Paul?
Fine. Like, honestly, so I got her going and she's fine. If I turned her in as a final exam in like a 100, level mechanic class, I think I'd get a B or maybe even a B plus. Like, it's fine, but it's not Bristol. It's not exactly what you'd want.
The feed lines from the float chamber to the jet won't make any difference at all to the airflow through the butterfly.
Okay.
Have you disconnected the two butterflies from each other before you're starting to adjust the butterfly opening?
I did, Michael. So I, followed the workshop manual, took the dash pod off, took the pistons out, took the jet needles out, put them all back in, did the little piston lever in the bottom of the carb to make sure they popped right, and did all of that. I will admit the one thing I did fail to do was to zero out the choke throttles, right? So there's the choke, the fast idle screw. I did not zero that out when I went through the procedure.
Well, you certainly got to have that out of the question. But what you're actually trying to do here is ensure that the butterflies are in the same position relative to each other. So if you take the suction chambers off, you can see the butterfly, and then check that they are actually in the same position relative to each other. But to adjust the throttle settings properly, you have to disconnect the carburetors from each other with respect to the throttles. Did you do that?
Yeah, I did. I did.
Okay. So the next problem, it's quite common on the issues, is that the two little screws that hold the butterfly into the throttle shaft come loose, and the butterfly slides down and jams itself a little bit open. So one carburetor will never close off completely. So you have to make sure that those screws are tight, and it's a little tricky to do. You usually have to take the carburetors off to do it.
Yep. Okay. That makes some sense. And I did not take the carburetors off when I was doing this. When I did this, I didn't have time to do that. But that makes sense. Let me go back when I have a full day to do it. I'll go back, and I was going to take the carburetors fully off and run through it again. And I'll keep that in mind.
Great.
The other thing, Paul, caution in there. Today I have been dealing with a fellow who had a BJ7 with HS6s on, and as he took the air breathers off, he dropped one of the nuts into the throat of the carburetor.
Ooh.
And didn't figure it would hurt anything. And now we're looking for two valves and a piston.
Wow. That's an expensive mistake.
Not good.
So be careful.
No doubt. Thank you, guys.
Paul, the other thing I would check is, have you checked to make sure the bushings in your throttle shafts are good and tight and not sloppy?
I took a look at that, and they seemed pretty good. It seemed pretty tight. It seemed, in fairly good shape.
Because you'll never be able to synchronize them if one is good, one is bad, or if they're both bad.
Yep. That makes sense.
Okay, good. So, Mike, would you like to do your presentation on special tools?
Yeah, I could do. I'm having a little bit of problem with connection, but I'm happy to try and do it.
Okay.
I have had disconnections for up to 8 seconds, so you may have to sort of fill in the gaps.
Okay.
If you will, but yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Take me a second to get it up on the screen.
Okay.
One thing I can tell you, when I do this, it's a PowerPoint presentation. When I do it, I cannot hear, because of my connection's not good enough, I can't hear your questions.
Okay.
So what I would ask is, if you have questions, try to make a note of which page it is, or whereabouts in the presentation it is, and I'll try to ask at the end.
Or you can also put it into the chat. If people have questions, you can put it in chat. Again, note where the page where Michael is on that.
Right, so I'm going to try and open the PowerPoint presentation, and then I just click share screen, don't I, Pete?
Yep, the green button with the arrow key up for share screen.
Okay, give me a minute here.
And those of you who are coming to Enclave the third week in September will get a chance to meet both Bob Ewell, and Michael will be there. And Bob, again, thank you to Bob Abbott for being a premium sponsor, and Bob Ewell from Auto Farm. So you'll be able to, a lot of these folks that we meet every the second Monday of the month, you're gonna be able to see in person when we're down in the Poconos. So looking forward to that.
One other thing while Bob's doing that,
Michael.
I just want to remind folks that this weekend is the Vermont Automobile Enthusiast Car Show in Waterbury. Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Great.
Now, can you guys see the screen now or not?
Not yet.
No.
Okay, hang on, I gotta get back. This gave me trouble last time. Just a minute.
Hey, Rob Moore, where are you located?
Well, I'm in Needham, but right now I'm at my little cottage in Bombazine, Vermont, near Rutland, Vermont, Killington.
Okay. Well, as Peter told you, I'm in Medfield.
Right.
And just finished my restoration on the BT7. So if you ever want to come over and take a look at anything, you're welcome to.
Yeah, that I appreciate the offer. Maybe next time I'm down in the Boston area, I will hook up with you if Peter can set us up on
Yeah.
a blind date.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll do that.
right,
Michael, we
great.
can see your presentation.
Okay, good. I put this together for the local club back in June, as you can see there. It starts off, really, it's just, the things that I have had to develop over the years to be able to work on Healeys. As it says there, I was very lucky because I had the 4 years of intensive engineering. We actually made by hand during that training. The gizmo, the 18-way thing actually fits together 18 different ways, and there's a stud that goes through those holes. It had to have gaps of no more than 1/1000th of an inch, and it was done with hacksaws, drill press, and hand files.
Wow.
I've got quite a bit of general shop equipment in my very small garage. And these are things that I use very regularly, except perhaps the distributor machine. If without access to most of this equipment, I would not be able to do a lot of the work that I do. I started a business way back in the 80s called Precision Sports Car, bottom left there. And I acquired a lot of this equipment while I actually had that business. The business closed and I got a lot of the equipment back. I use the lathe an awful lot, and these are some of the little things that I make on the lathe for Healeys. In my little garage, I have a hoist. If you have the head clearance, there's probably not a better investment. It's an absolutely fabulous way to work on cars. I use it as an engine stand, as you can see on the bottom left, using little brackets that I bolt to the side of the block. And if you mount the block on its side like that, you can rotate it 180 degrees, top to bottom. It makes engine building really, really easy because you can put the crankshaft in, the flywheel in, and everything without having to take it off one of those stupid back end engine stands. On my hoist here, you can see my BN2, which I just bought, my BN1 below it, and I have on the BN2 where you can see that's my transportation stand for the frame, and this is my my rotisserie that I bolt to the two frames. Sorry.
How high is your ceilings, Michael?
My ceilings are probably 12 feet in that area.
Nice.
Pretty high. This is one of the best things that I ever developed was this frame rotisserie. I don't know if anybody's doing a frame up restoration. This is the first time I've used one. I cannot believe that I managed for all these years without fabulous machine. Absolutely fabulous.
Now, did you build that or did you buy that, Michael?
Yes, I built it. Yeah. Wow. If anybody's got their home shop, another of the best things you can do is sort out stuff so you can find it easily. Everybody has a bucket of bolts and you spend 20 minutes every time you need a screw to find the right one. And I've spent many hours doing this, sorting these screws and bolts and fasteners out into their various cabinets and so on. It is a huge help. I have quite a bit of precision measuring equipment. Some of it I hardly ever use. So you can see up on the top left, there's this thing called a brake drum caliper. I had to buy that when I started my business so I could do safety inspections for cars. And I've actually used it twice in about 44 years. But some of this other stuff I use very, very frequently. Some of it I never use. Some more special tools. We're talking about tube bending. That device up on the top left there, that's a really useful tube bending machine. It only does one radius, but you can do lovely bends in steel tubing with that thing. But you be careful to get the one that does 3/16 because they come in various sizes. This is for doing really tight bends in 3/16 tubing. They come up on, you can see them on eBay. They're really good. If you're doing brake bleeding, this brake clamp tool is wonderful for clamping off a brake flex hose to determine where you've got a problem. This is the spark tester we were talking about earlier. Yep. That goes onto the spark plug. The plug lead goes onto there, and you see it flash inside this little window. Wonderful device. This is a simpler version. I use quite a few torque wrenches. Obviously, doing restoration work, you're always looking for ways to do numbers, to duplicate engine plates and serial number plates that are missing. So I have quite a bunch of those. Brake caliper pistons are one of the damnedest tool. You can do it with air pressure. It's pretty dangerous, but this tool here is wonderful. You just slide it into the brake caliper, use the Allen wrench to tighten that screw there, and it grips on the inside of the brake caliper piston, and you can get them out just about every time with that.
Wow.
This device here is a recording compression gauge, really simple device. It's actually a Volkswagen special tool, but it records you can see these little lines on this piece of paper here. It records your compression on those little pieces of paper, and you can just date them and stick them up on the wall, and you can compare your compressions a year later to see if anything drastic has happened.
Wow. That's nice.
This on the left is a slide hammer for taking out main bearing caps is what I use it for mostly. These little adapters that I made,
Yeah, we lost you, Michael.
Screws onto the bottom where that foot is, and then you just slam that thing up and down, and it pulls the main bearing caps really easily. That's obvious. Steering box, and I rebuilt steering boxes. This is the reamer for reaming the bushes in steering boxes and in steering idlers. Very useful. Huh. You got a noisy wheel bearing or a noise that you cannot identify and you have to do it on the road. This little device here is actually very useful. It has 4 microphones which plug into this box here, and then you have headphones, and there's a little knob there. You can select which microphone you're listening to. So you can put one on each hub, for example, or on a kingpin or a shock absorber, and drive down the road, and you can listen to where the source of the noise is, and it actually works extremely well.
Are the microphones held on with magnets?
They are little alligator clips.
Okay.
Quite simple. And you can actually put them on with the wire ties as well.
Got it.
Well, these are gauges for doing overdrive pressure. That little piece there and the same thing there are actually the plugs that are on the top of the operating valve for an overdrive unit. We just drilled a hole in the top and brazed an adapter on, and then you can get good overdrive pressure. And when you do it that way, you can see the pressure change as the overdrive engages. If you're testing batteries, there is nothing to replace a battery load tester. This is an old carbon piles type that I've had for years, but quite often you'll find a battery it looks like it's working well, but until you put it onto a carbon pile tester, you don't really know how well it's going to work. 12-volt volt probe tester is a tool, and never leave home without it. It is fantastic for diagnosing electrical faults on Healeys. Everybody should have one. You can buy them, you know, Princess Auto or Harbor Freight. They're not expensive. A multimeter, obviously, this is a Fluke special automotive one. Very, very useful, but I only ever use it for voltage and for current loads and that sort of thing. This snap-on meter here has a clamp meter here, so you can clamp that around a battery cable and crank the starter, and you can see exactly how many amps the starter is using or is calling for. Really useful if you're trying to diagnose starting issues. Lots of reamers. They're expensive, but they're indispensable. You can see what they're used for. These two here are the original Healey kingpin reamers that came from BMC. Nowadays, Moss sells one reamer with both cutters on it, the way the MGB one is there.
Oh.
That's a genuine Churchill or a BMC overdrive alignment tool that you slide that into the overdrive to line up the splines before you put the overdrive together. You can do the same thing with a gearbox output shaft, but if you don't have a spare one, it's a bit tricky. Anybody know what that's for?
Nope.
When you're putting a gearbox together, you have to put all the rollers for the lay gear, that's the one on the bottom of the gearbox, they have to be put inside the lay gear. They're held in place with grease, and you put that shaft inside to hold them there, and it's actually shorter than the shaft that goes right through the gearbox, so you can slide the lay shaft down into place, and then that holds the needle roller bearings in place, and then you push the main shaft, the lay shaft through to put it in position. I'm sure you probably didn't follow that, but that's a rough
Well,
example.
but the BJ8s don't have different overdrives?
Yeah, but you still need to do it with the BJ8 just to hold those little cage rollers in place.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is a special kingpin bush tool that I made up for inserting and removing kingpin bushes. This is a really neat Churchill tool, original Churchill tool for undoing the bezels on the dash switch.
Oh, really? Wow. We lost you again, Michael.
Switches with them. BJ8s have riv nuts around the rear shroud for holding the 10-ax fasteners, or lifter dots. This is an original BF Goodrich 10-ax riv nut insertion tool.
Wow.
If you're ever rebuilding a differential, you have to hold the pinion on the input shaft to retorque the nut in the center of the pinion shaft. This is an original BMC tool for doing it, and it does sprites on one side and big Healeys on the other side. There's these little pegs that go into the thing, and you can put your socket through this big hole in the middle. This is, you know, the big octagonal nuts on the rear wheel bearings.
Yeah.
This is the original BMC tool for BN1 and MGA and MGB, and this is one that I made for Healeys. So the studs go through these holes, and these ears stick out. That goes on the nut, and you bash on the ears, and you can undo the nut. This
Clever.
is another factory tool. It's called a slugging wrench. That's for the front nut on the crankshaft. They have to be done up really tight, and that's the tool. You hit it with a big hammer right on the sides. I used to have 3 of those. I'm down to 1 after lending them to people. I do a lot of, you have to do a lot of work with threads when you're restoring cars, obviously. And I have quite a selection of taps and dies. This is just a small part. These are BA, British Association. These are BSF thread chasers. These are all BSF. I do a lot of work on BN1s, BSF taps. I collected tap wrenches. I don't know why. This is a small part of my collection of tap wrenches. I don't know why I have so many. People may know of a guy called Richard Mayer who races Healeys he's been racing them for years, and I was trying to straighten up the frame on that BN2, and he suggested this is the way to do it. And it's a wonderful tool. That's a ball joint separator, which I drilled out the thread, put this piece of threaded rod in with it's got a slot in it, which sits over the seam where the dent is. So you put it down, you tack weld 4 tack welds onto the frame, put this nut down, tighten it up, and it pulls the dent right out of the frame. It's a wonderful, wonderful way of getting dents out of frames. If you've ever had to change the valve springs on a 100 without taking the head off, this is a tool that I developed to do that. You can see how it compresses the valve springs. The trick is you take the spark plug out, put the piston at the bottom, spark plug out, feed a whole lot of sash cord in through the spark plug hole, turn the crankshaft until it stops, and it will be holding the valves up into the head. And then you can put this little thing on, tighten up this nut, and it will allows you to take the collets out and then remove the valve springs. Quite a useful tool. He's got a pair of these there for putting the front springs in on a Healey. This is the tool. This is like the tool you get in a factory toolkit for taking the little caps out of the front hubs.
Okay.
This is for taking temperature bulbs out on 6-cylinder engines. It's actually a 5/8 deep socket that I used a grinder to cut a big slot in the side here. So you can put that over the temperature bulb with the capillary coming out through the slot here. Then you put the hose clamp on and tighten it up, which stops the socket from spreading as you try to undo the 5/8. And that almost always gets them out, and they can be a real bear at the best of times. Side shift gearboxes have a big hexagonal plug, 2 of them in the sides. And that's a special tool I made to get those out. The square tool for taking out differential and gearbox plugs.
Nice.
BJ8 choke controls. Man, those things have given me a lot of trouble over the years. This is a special tool that I developed to tighten the nut up on the back of a BJ8 choke.
Yeah, please.
Side screen socket tool. I see a guy selling these in the Healey Club magazine. This works just as well. It's an Allen screw that's been machined down with a nut on it, 2 little notches to go into the side screen socket, and you can turn the socket to align it. If you're balancing con rods, you don't have to do anything special. This little rig here sits on a postage scale. Use this piece of string from a shelf above, and you can use that rig to balance con rods to within 1 gram.
Wow.
Special tool for taking the later overdrive plugs off. That's a socket welded in the middle, which has got a 1/2-inch square. And these little ears sit in the little notches in the socket, and away you go. This one here is one I did really recently. It was a delight to make it work. If anybody's ever taken the bolt out of the front of the rear springs on a BJ, on any Healey, you'll know that they seize in the metallastic bush that's inside the spring. And you usually end up having to use a sawzall to cut down either side to get the spring out. But this thing here, you put that over the spring, as you can see it installed. You tighten up this nut here, and it has various adapters, and it will push those bolts out without too much trouble. It works really well. More special tools. If you're squeezing the rivets on the rear shroud, that's the trunk lip you can see there. And there's a rivet in place, and that will squeeze those rivets without having to try and run a hammer up the back of the rear shroud and put a dolly in there. It does a wonderful job. That was a steering joint separator that I modified. You want to find top dead center on an engine. You get a spark plug, you smash all the ceramic out, you run a tap down the inside, you put some 3/8 threaded rod down like this, and you run the piston up to the top, turn this thing here until this touches the piston. Take the piston down a little bit, turn it in 2 or 3 turns, and then the run piston up until it touches it. Put a mark on the front timing pulley. Then you rotate the engine right through 360 degrees, and that will stop again. You put another mark on the front timing pulley, and halfway between those is top dead center. There's a lot of engines don't have top dead center marks on them. This must have been one of the very first tools that I ever made when I was working on Healeys, and everybody struggles with this, is to get the air filters off. And it actually works remarkably well. You can just work on those air filter bolts and get that off. The centrifugal switch on a BN1 overdrive unit, had to make this thing in desperation one day to get those off. This is a neat tool. People may have read about this thing. This is for getting the overdrive onto the gearbox without too much bother. It holds the overdrive pump piston down while you slide the overdrive onto the gearbox. It works remarkably well. And there's an article on my blog about that, which is really worth reading. Bleeding brakes was always a hassle for everybody. This is a snap-on tool. You put a bit of brake fluid into here, and you put a little bit of pressure into the tank, about 3 or 4 PSI. This special adapter here clips onto the brake reservoir, and the pressure comes in here, and it makes brake bleeding absolutely a cinch. You just open the bleed screw. This thing keeps the brake fluid reservoir full, and run it through. It's the way to bleed brakes. Cooling system. I rebuilt a lot of water pumps. There's a water pump, a 4-cylinder water pump on test. I'm using a drill there to rotate and run the pump in. You can see I have this device here, which was it's a cooling system pressure tester. I can pump it up to about 6 or 7 PSI there. The pump is bolted onto this rig here. It fits. Those 3 bolts are for 100 pumps, and the other ones are for 6-cylinder pumps. And I can rebuild a pump and then put it on there and pressure test it overnight and run it in. So you know that they work. There it is running.
Oh, wow. Nice.
One of the biggest hassles when you're building a really beat up 100 is getting the windshield posts in the right position. I struggled with this for years. And I made it this trammel, and this, you can put this on the 2 spigots or the 2 pins that stick down from the windshield frame, and you can then check the holes in the windshield posts against that distance, and it does make the job a lot easier. Still not easy, but a lot easier. Okay, last one. There, feed it through.
We lost you again, Michael.
Well, you haven't seen me. Can you read that?
Yeah, we can read it now. We got it.
Yeah. 1228 thread. Where's it used in a Healey? Send me an email. There's my email address. If you get the right answer, I'll send you that key ring. First person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had 33 on the call. Wow. Well, thank you, Michael. That was great.
Hope that was interesting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Questions for Michael?
Yeah, questions.
So if you were to rank the top 2 or 3 of those tools you have there, that you think everyone should have, what would you rank the top 2 or 3?
Definitely the 12-volt probe light, number 1. Everybody needs to have one of those. What else? Oh, the wrench for tightening the front nut on a crankshaft. You wouldn't believe the number of Healeys I've had come in with the front pulley rattling on the crankshaft. Absolutely essential.
But now, is that a tool you made, Michael?
No, that's actually the one. I had 3 of those Churchill tools. Those are the ones I lent to people. It's just got that hexagon on it, but it's a real Churchill tool. But you could make them pretty easily these days with laser cutting.
Michael,
Okay.
do you have a tool for bleeding the clutch slave?
When I'm bleeding, yeah, the same, that snap-on tool that I mentioned, you can use that for bleeds. But are you thinking about reaching the bleed screw?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know why so many people have trouble with that. I can reach those things. I just use a little 7/16 wrench and put my arm way down there. I can actually open that bleed screw. I don't know why some people have so much trouble.
Maybe I was trying to do it from underneath, so it's better to do it from up top.
Yeah, I reach way down from the top. Yeah.
Okay, so that's my mistake, is trying to do it from
reach it with a
underneath.
little. Yeah, you can reach it with a little 7/16 ring wrench.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Michael?
The no takers on that thread, eh?
Well, thank you very much. That was very interesting. Obviously, you've got a very complete shop, far greater than any of us would have, but that looks great. Now, you said on the rotisserie, you made the rotisserie.
I made that rotisserie, yeah. And
okay.
I did up the drawing. Somebody on one of the news groups told me that if you pivot the car 5.5 inches above the frame, it's perfectly balanced, and they were dead on. That rotisserie, you can move it with one finger and the car stays exactly where I put it.
Wow.
Brilliant. Of course, when I put the engine in, it may not be like that.
Right. I've got a rotisserie for bug eye sprites or frog eyes, but I don't have one for a big Healey. But that's great.
Peter, I made one of those out of 2 engine stands. Yeah, and
for a big Healey.
I've used it on a Healey, and I've used it on vintage sprint cars.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I use engine stands on mine, but it's again for a bug eye. So obviously a bug eye is quite a bit smaller than a big Healey.
Yeah, the biggest challenge actually for me was connecting the brackets to the car to put onto the stands, and in my case, in all cases, I'm using the bumper mounts.
Yeah,
right.
I noticed that. Yep.
Yeah. Front and rear.
The rear ones are only just strong enough, to be honest.
Got it. Okay. So are there other questions that folks have tonight that we can hopefully answer?
Yeah, Peter, I had a question.
Please, Les.
Does anybody know a good supplier of electrical switches? I have some auxiliary things like a fan, the driving fog lights, a multi-fuel pump, which would be a kind of a 3-way, and either push-pull or toggle switches. Who supplies those good quality ones?
You might try Pegasus in Wisconsin. It's a race supply shop.
Pegasus?
Pegasus, yeah.
Okay.
They have lots of good stuff. I don't know if they have switches, but anything they have is high quality.
Anyone else have any other ideas for switches? Yeah, I was able to get I mentioned that switch from my overdrive, and it just fits in there because it's got that D shaped coming through the shroud on a BJ8. So I had to go with that's reproduction switch, and so far so good. But I had looked at. Go ahead.
What about British Wiring?
Do they sell switches? I've never noticed that with them.
I don't know, but the wiring harness I bought from them and the other connectors were outstanding. So I just thrown it out there.
Okay, thanks.
Les, there's that other one that's Rhode Island wire too. In addition to British Wiring, they make all their own wiring harnesses and whatnot.
Okay.
That segues into my question, if I may.
Sure.
I was the one that had the fire.
Yes.
And so I was going to ask, what harness you guys would recommend, BJ8 phase 2 for one. And would
So are you
say
looking to do
good-
a reproduction one on that? A reproduction wiring harness?
I just want to get whatever's best out there.
Is it an original car or a modified?
It's pretty original.
And British
It's a
Wiring,
golden beige BJ8.
British Wiring sell harnesses made by a company in Birmingham called Auto Sparks. They're very good quality, but if you want concourse quality, you have to go to Rhode Island.
To the Rhode Island. Okay. All right. And my next question is, I'm in Connecticut, actually Madison, and I'm looking for a recommendation of where to take the car to have it fixed, repaired, have a new harness put in. Any ideas?
Les or Ted Kiesling, any recommendations in Connecticut for Bud?
Well, Cardone and Sons is down in Old Saybrook area. They've done a lot of work on cars.
So you like them, because I brought it there. I brought it there to have them look at it.
Could
Yeah,
try
I
Twin
mean,
Brooks in Suffield too. They did the paint on mine and then a lot of the body work.
So Bud, are you mainly looking for to install that wiring harness?
Yeah, I'm gonna run it through the insurance. I have insurance, so.
And is that what caused the fire? Was a short through the wiring harness?
Yeah, I flicked the light switch on. They didn't come on. I'd never had issues with the lighting for, had the car for 40 some years. And then I tried it again and I went out and they were on very dim and it was dusk. And then all of a sudden I saw red on the firewall.
Wow.
And shut it off and a lot of smoke and yeah.
If you're going through your insurance, we used to do harnesses, and the base was 28 hours for a harness change.
Wow.
So you know what they're into.
Okay, yeah, I think yeah, that's right. Close to what I think they anticipate, something like that. I can't remember. I've had one estimate. Now, the other place that's near me on the other side of me is Bug-Eye Guy. Now, Rick mentioned that he heard some maybe not great things. So I just wanted to.
Well, I mean, David certainly specializes in bug eyes, obviously, in sprites more so than big Healeys. He does sell big Healeys if you got them, but.
Yeah, so
and David's going to be at Enclave as well. He's bringing 501, the first sprite, and Blair Harbor, who's a good friend of Michael, is coming down with a 138031, the very first 100. So we're looking forward to both those cars down at Enclave.
So I mean, nowadays, to find anyone to work on a Healey isn't the easiest thing. So. Yeah, I thought a Healey guy would be good. He would know Healeys. Now, Cardone and daughter, he said, I told him, it's a golden beige, late model, BJ8. And he says, now those have 2 lights in the front or 1. And so I scratched my head a little bit and said, obviously he's not a Healey expert, but I'm looking for someone to do a good job. So, if people have heard that they do good work, maybe it makes sense to take it there.
Well, I know that Ducha has all of her work done there, and she's been very happy with them. I have never had any electrical work done there or anything much done there, so I can't really say much about how well they would do with that. But I know he's been in business for like 50 years, and he has a lot of different cars in there, and he's a little slow at getting things turned around.
Bob Abbott, is that something you'd be interested in?
We've done a lot of wiring harnesses, sure.
So Bud, that's Bob Abbott. He's up in Ipswich, Mass. I bet half the people on this call have had Bob do work for him. Bob's done work for them, including he rebuilt the motor of my BJ8 last year. It's great.
Okay.
Tired
All
on, but
right. And I can get his information from, what's the best place to get a hold of Bob?
Call me. 603 425 3333.
What was the area code again?
603.
603. Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
The New
Okay,
Hampshire
thanks,
area
Bob.
code, but the shop's in Ipswich, Mass. A little
Okay.
closer to you.
Thank you.
Other questions tonight?
I have a question for Ken.
Go ahead.
Unmute yourself. So Ken, did I hear you say you were going to the BAE car show in Waterbury this weekend?
yes, I did.
Okay, I'll be there.
Okay.
What are
well,
you driving? A Healey?
No, I'm bringing up my 1926 Franklin Boattail Rumble Seat Roadster.
Oh, that I'm sure that'll stick out.
I guess I'll do a little bit of bragging here. It was my mother that founded that club, the VAE, back in 1953. And this is the 65th year of that swap meet. It used to be in Stowe. We moved it down to Waterbury 5 years ago. And we get between 600 and 800 cars, about 400 to 500 vendors. We have street dances, parades, valve cover races. It's a great time.
It has
And
the
the
biggest swap meet I've ever seen.
Yep. And the reason I'm bringing the Franklin was that was the impetus for the start of that car club.
Oh, that's nice.
So
All right,
and
I'll
it's-
come-
there too.
I'll come look you up.
all right.
I also will be there.
Thanks, John. Good.
Who's that? Who else?
John Spencer.
Yep, I'll be there. I've been going to that meet for many, many, many years. Started off with my 1924 Dodge Brothers.
Well, I'll be on the registration desk Friday afternoon,
Oh.
and I'll be
I'll be
doing
registering.
and I'll be doing car owner interviews on Saturday, and I'll be judging on Sunday. So look me up.
Well,
I will.
Yeah, and those of you that may not know, but Ken is one of the original founders of the Austin-Healey Club of New England, with Bill Wood.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I actually spoke to Bill Wood a couple of nights ago, and he's working on an MGTD, not a Healey anymore. So, but we're trying to convince him to go. He's been invited to Enclave, but he doesn't feel as if he feels well enough to make the trip. So.
right.
So thank you for
Okay.
asking about Waterbury. Appreciate it very much. It's a great show. And one thing that's really nice about this show is all the money we raise, we keep seed money for the next year, and we donate the rest of the money to 11 of the Vermont State high school shop programs for a scholarship for anybody that's going on into the automotive trade. And
That's good.
Snap-on helps us with the money on that also. So it's a good cause. Thank you for letting me blab.
No, absolutely. No, it's interesting. And thanks for sharing that, Ken. And so, yeah, so Ken will be coming down to Enclave. I think he's going to bring his BN2 on a trailer. He's in the middle of a restoration of his BN2.
Yep.
So, yeah, so we've got over 50 hundreds coming down to the Poconos, and we've got 10 that are going to be in the concourse class. Rich Mastronati is one of them. He's got his PT7 that's going to be there in concourse, and Michael's going to be one of the judges in concourse. And Bob, are you a judge too?
No.
No. Okay. Bob's going to be helping us out with a Funkana. So thank you, Bob, for that.
I think Jim Smalley is gonna help with that, isn't he?
Yes, yep. Yep, absolutely. And Don Schneider and Randy Hicks. So it's the four. So Michael and Jim and Don Schneider are the three heads of that.
Yeah, and
So-
Lynn Ryan was supposed to come, but I guess his wife is very ill.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Haven't seen that. So Bruce Ketchen, anything you'd like to say before we close? Our president? You're on mute.
Yeah, thanks again, Peter, for hosting another great night, technical session. We're getting close to Enclave. Anybody who's not familiar with it at this point, just read your Healey Mark magazines. I think we've done a pretty good job of covering the events that are taking place there. It looks like it's going to be a fantastic event, close to 600 people attending, and I think 250 Peter Austin-Healey's will be there. So it's a really great event. It's a periodic event that's co-hosted with the Austin-Healey Sports and Touring Club. So it's a real great opportunity to meet some people who, many of whom also belong to the Austin-Healey Club, but there's a number there that will you probably won't see unless you somehow become involved with the Sports and Touring Club. So it's a great program, and I'm looking forward to being there myself, and hope to see many of you there.
Great. Yeah, we've got a couple coming over from Hong Kong, another couple coming from Iceland, and two coming from the UK. So we'll have very much of an international, 44 different clubs between HCA and the Austin-Healey Sports and Touring Car Club are going to be represented. I think coming from Canada, 4 different clubs from Canada are represented there. So we're going to I think about 40 people are coming down from Canada. So we look forward to seeing Michael and Bob and our Canadian friends. So unfortunately, we didn't get to see them last year because our borders were closed then, but we're very confident they'll be open this year. So, right. So thank you all we will have a call on September 12th. And again, hopefully everyone's doing well, everything getting ready for that big event. Bob, anything you want Bob Britton, anything you want to say about British invasion?
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Yeah. Just like the show that Ken was talking about, you know, it is definitely the largest British car show on the East Coast, and it gets upwards of 500 to 600 British cars every year. So if you're still interested in coming and you hadn't registered, I think the deadline's like September 2nd. It's the second weekend of September. It's moved up 1 week from traditionally the third week. So it's always a great event.
Yep, absolutely.
It really is. This will be my 30th year at it. So it's and I'm also hosting a cocktail party. Any Healey people can come over for a beer or a glass of wine at my condo.
Bob, is this a possibility this may be the last year?
Frankly, I thought last year was going to be the last year, but it seems to be put on by one man and his wife and some friends, and he's been doing it for 30 years, and eventually, I don't know what he's going to do with it or who's going to take it over, but I mean, I have no reason to suspect one way or another that it's going to end, but who knows?
Right.
It's not like a club putting it on, it is a for-profit event.
Right.
But anyway.
How large is the flea market?
Oh, nothing like frankly, I found that flea market bigger than in Carlisle. The one at the one, especially when it was in Stowe. I don't know if it's as big as now as in Waterbury, but I've never been to such a bigger automobile flea market than the VAE show in Stowe. It's huge. It's bigger than the cars field.
No, I was asking about, British invasion.
No, that's what I said. That it's not really much of a flea market. There might be, 24 vendors there. But that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
It's, I don't think people go there for the flea market.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
I
well,
look
thank
forward
you
to
all.
meeting you.
Yeah. So thank you all for your time and your questions, and look forward to talking to you guys again on September 12th. Have a great month of August. Hopefully things will cool down shortly and be able to get out and enjoy our cars. So thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Peter,
everybody.
thanks for
Thank you.
doing this.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good night.
Peter. Good night.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Dana.